Tonight we're here for our 13th and final installment of the Hops Lockdown series. So tonight we'll be sitting down with Cody Ortega, Director of Baseball Operations with the New England Scorpions, to talk a little recruiting. Cody, thanks for being on with us tonight.
Man, I get to be the finale, huh?
Yep.
We'll end it with a bang.
Unlucky 13.
We'll make it lucky.
So why don't we start off? We'll start off with everyone. Talk a little bit about your playing career into your coaching career and the evolution of the Scorpions and how it went from the Prospects to the Scorpions.
Yeah, it's all kind of a crazy story. I mean, I grew up in Central Florida, Kissimmee, Florida, right next to Disney World. Grew up my whole life, had never seen snow. Was fortunate enough to receive a scholarship to play up here in Rhode Island. Came up, snow was not what I thought it was at first. It's not what you think it is on videos and on cartoons and everything else. But ended up sticking up here for 4 years, had a good time. Played for some great coaches. My high school coach was very influential. Coach Jim Murphy, he's over at Paradise Valley Community College. It's in Arizona. Played for Coach Hopkins, who Matt knows all about. And he was also very influential, great coach, more than just a baseball coach, talked about respect, playing the game the right way, getting your diploma, learning how to be a family man, and how to pay the bills, which is all extremely important. Then played for Coach Bergelac, who I liked, had a lot of good experience. He coached in the NECBL with the Newport Goals at one point. He was a great guy, and I knew from the beginning I was very fortunate to be around great coaches, not only coaches that could teach the game, but that could teach life. And I always felt that they were extremely impactful to me. So there was no doubt in my mind, even when I was in high school, I wanted to someday give this same opportunity back to players. And I wanted to become a coach. So I finished up my playing career. I jumped on with URI to run their prospect camps. I did a bunch of camps with them. Shifted to Community College of Rhode Island, CCRI, as an assistant coach, handled hitters, was the first base coach there, handled a lot of recruitment, brought in some guys from different states across the country. And I really felt at that point I had opportunity to continue in the college game, but I really felt there was a need in the travel baseball industry. I love Rhode Island. I love this area. I think people in this area, like any other place, the grass is always greener on the other side. And I think people don't realize how plentiful the recruitment is up here, between all different types of divisions, all different types of academics. And I just felt that going this route, at the time it was the Rhode Island Prospects. By starting that up, we could offer recruitment and insight to players to get that advantage over others in order to, continue their careers in the college field. So we became the Rhode Island Prospects out of 365 Sports. I was very fortunate to join with Joseph Castellino and Jim Gervais, who started the program. Matt will tell you this, and John, you are a nobody if you're a lone wolf. I had great help. Chris Mann came over right away. I think very highly of Chris, and he's done a great job. And along the way, we just kept it was a snowball effect. Joe Brooks joined our staff. We've had assistant coaches, Tyler Kutu, Matt Ferreira. This year, Mike Sherman joined. We had Brad Douglas last year, who's an assistant at Salve. And then obviously we picked up the one and only John DeRoyne. And he's been incredible as well. So that all started, and ultimately we became the Scorpions. So it was a difficult move because when you start something from scratch and you see it become exactly what you want it to be, and it's getting bigger and bigger, it's tough to just, move on from it and let it all go. But we were approached this past off season by the Orlando Scorpions. Those aren't familiar with the Scorpions, they're a top 5 nationally ranked travel baseball program in the country by Perfect Game. And I grew up knowing them, obviously being in Florida. We happened to be down in Florida at West Palm Beach in one of the big Perfect Game events. And all of our teams were fantastic. We were putting up great numbers. We were beating nationally ranked powerhouses. One of our teams, our 15-year-old team, at the time who was 14, was competing up in a division in the 15U division and won the whole event. So we did beat the Scorpions down there. One of our other teams, Coach Brooks, played one of their top Scorpions programs. I think they ended up losing like 2-1, 3-1. It was a great game, and the coaching staff of the Scorpions were very considerate and were very thankful for how we were doing things. And it wasn't just go out there and play. We were constantly talking to college coaches. We had college coaches showing us the games, trying to get in touch with our players and make sure that they're getting the looks they need. And lo and behold, the following week, I get a phone call from Janet Weber, who's one of the main people in the Scorpions organization. She called, talked to us about the program. It was almost like I joke around with it, but it was almost like an interrogation. We had been approached by many organizations, including Southern organizations, to join with them. It's not that we don't appreciate those offers or that we didn't think of joining those types of programs, but there's just a certain way we believe this industry should behave. And we believe in the players and being about the players. And we felt that the Scorpions offered that. So it was a no-brainer between what their brand and what their name brought to the table, as well as the tournament selections we're now able to participate in, the connections we have now made, sponsorships with Marucci. It was just a lot of things that we felt as an organization would take a long time to get to, and we felt that we were a great fit with their organization in terms of beliefs, which was our main priority. And when that happened, it's been a great experience so far. Hopefully, under the circumstances we're in with COVID-19, hopefully we'll have a chance to be able to participate this summer and represent that name. But we're the seventh affiliate. They have 6 others. They have 3 in Florida. They have a Utah, a Georgia, and a Missouri. And now we're representing Northeast.
Yeah, so I think I think that's important. Talking about, like you said, the connections and the specificity of the tournaments that we play in. And I think people get caught up in the national schedule of, we have to go play a national schedule. We got to go to all these big perfect game events, which we do. Like, we do play those. But I want you to talk a little bit about the importance of the tournaments you play, and not the name of the tournaments, but more so the quality you're getting out of where you're going.
Yeah, I think you nailed it on the head. I think that let's face it, we all know it. It's what looks good to a parent. That's what this industry is. And I think that some parents do their research and others don't. Mm-hmm. And there are a few programs that do a terrific job understanding it's not all about playing in the top-notch programs or top-notch tournaments and, hoping that one game a kid is seen without doing any type of homework beforehand. But it's not all about that. I mean, we play in local tournaments here. Firecracker does a fantastic job. They're just one of the events that we participate in that gives us coverage in this area. I mean, studies show that 80% of the time you stay in your region when it comes to colleges. So again, a lot of people want to leave New England, just like I wanted to leave Florida. But it's kind of stupid not to look into your own region. So some programs wanted to go down south 3-4 times. That's great. And those tournaments give you a variety of different experiences. But ultimately, if you're looking to give yourself the best option to feel out schools and find your fit, some of the local tournaments up here do a fantastic job.
Yeah, I agree.
And don't get me wrong. Listen, we go to WWBA, which is probably the biggest event in the country. We do the New Balance Future Stars series. So, we participate in those events too. I'm not knocking them. It's a whole different caliber. I think that it's great for the players to see that competition as well. But I think there's a well-balanced mix when you're looking to get the best exposure you can.
Yeah, I agree. And it's something we heard when we were talking to Elise and the people at the Thunder the other night. Was like, it's about
they do a terrific job.
Yeah, and it's about the connections. Like, it's about having someone to advocate you that coaches trust, It's not so much about where you go play. It's, who's going to come and watch you play, and the relationship with that your organization has with coaches.
Yeah.
So I guess,
and too, John, I mean, we had, you were there. We had University of Houston come to New York at an event to see a player. So it's if you have the right connections, it works.
Yeah. I think we can kind of talk a little more specifically about now, and how important I think that's going to be now is, who we don't know what's going to happen with summer ball.
Hang on, John, just 1 second. Cody, I want you to, if you can, and then go back to this, is talk about what would, if this wasn't going on, if everything was normal.
Yeah.
Let's start there, because I want guys to hear it in a little bit of a specific order. So if pretend COVID wasn't going on, and then we'll go into into John's question.
Yeah. You're talking about in terms of the recruiting?
Let's just lay out the rules and the dead periods, and when what college coaches can do, what kids can do. And then, so let's start with maybe a freshman or a sophomore and talk about them, and then talk about a junior. Yeah.
So if you're a freshman or sophomore, I get a lot of parents that'll say to me like, oh, it's too young. They shouldn't be doing any types of recruiting events, or how are they even going to speak to a college coach? Well, it can be done. We do it on a daily basis. So if you're a freshman or sophomore and this was not occurring, you'd be, the best possible way to do it is to have a person in your corner that can detail a game plan in which is going to best expose you. So if you're a 2023 and you do have the ability to play at a high level, D1s are who are recruiting 2022s and 2023s right now. So if you're a D1 player and you have that ability, we do a lot of things such as sending video that we make for the kids, recruitment video. You have to get that done. Camps are the biggest thing. There is that dead period, like you talked about, no matter what age you are, in which coaches, they're not allowed to attend games in a certain area. There are restrictions in what tournaments they can attend in the fall. So they do have camps, however, that they run, November, December, January, and then sometimes even into February. So we try to make sure our young guys that have that potential to play at that high level are able to, number one, understand where their fit would be. And I think the number one thing we discuss is the academic side. If you know that you're a top tier academic student and you want to pursue that path, then you're looking at Ivies, you're looking at Armed Forces, Army West Point, Naval Academy, places like that. Even schools like Notre Dame, Duke, high academic schools. So we try to sort through where their best fit is academically and physically, and we get them to those camps. But we don't just send them to a camp based out of pure luck. We contact these coaches and we talk to these coaches. We figure out what they are looking for in particular. I always compare it to like pieces of the puzzle. You may be the best 2023 third baseman in the Northeast, but if a school down south, SEC, ACC, already locked in a third baseman that's a 2023, or they have a younger group on the roster, you may not necessarily be a need for them. So we really try to figure out, without wasting someone's money, what the best fit is, and is this going to actually work?
Sure. No, that definitely makes sense. So if a player or a parent is a freshman or a sophomore and maybe isn't quite in your program, but are they allowed to reach out to college coaches? Are the coaches allowed to reach out back to them, or do they have to go through a middle person? How does that work?
Yeah. So if we'll take it as a person not in our program. If a person was not in our program or was not affiliated with a summer travel ball coach that has those connections with those schools, all they are allowed to receive are just repetitive, created responses by coaches in which applies with compliance. So, a 2023, 2022 could, email University of Houston, for example, and say, hey, I'm interested. Here's my video, everything else. Their response is going to be, here's the list of our camps. Try to come to a camp. They're not going to be able to have that negotiation with that player because the rules don't allow them to, being so young. Mm-hmm. So they can't sit there and write back to a parent of the player or that particular player and say to them, great stuff, man, give me a call, blah, blah, blah. It's not allowed. It's an NCAA rule violation. However, a player that, is in our program, we act as middleman. So I can make that phone call and I can talk to a coach and I can give them that player's cell phone number. They can't make that phone call, but the coach could very well text me or call me and say, please have John DeRoyne call me at 7 p.m. tonight. I therefore can text John and say, John, you need to call, this coach at 7 p.m. and John can make that phone call because coaches are allowed to pick up the telephone. So again, it's the NCAA. It's a very, very interesting organization. They do a lot of great things, and they also have their struggles with certain things. So, but there are loopholes in everything. So
I think that's where some of the confusion comes in, especially from parents, is they don't know what's real and what's not, right? They don't know. Like you might see some kids all talking about, oh yeah, some such and such is interested in me because they sent me an invitation to their camp, and that's where you can unfortunately see sometimes parents losing some money for that.
Yeah, and that's my thing. Our we say to every single parent when that player starts going through the process, which is, we do not want you to spend money that isn't necessary. Don't get me wrong. There's always a risk. A coach could call and say, yeah, we are interested in this player. But it doesn't mean that when you go to that camp, they're going to pull the trigger. So you still have to perform. But it isn't something in which, you can just email a coach and get a response. They can send out as many letters as they want, and I deal with it on a daily basis. John can verify with you. I probably talk to 10 plus coaches a day. And I probably receive 5 or more emails a day from parents with, letters from coaches saying attend this camp and trying to figure out, well, is it worth it? Is it just junk mail? Are they just trying to profit off this? And people got to remember, I was there. These assistant coaches make money off these camps. It's not a negative thing. Again, a lot of times, and I've done it myself, where you don't invite a particular person or you get a random person that shows up, and it's not common, but they could, have a great day and you're now interested. But these guys are trying to make a living too. And unfortunately, when it comes to NCAA baseball, we are behind the 8 ball when it comes to coaches being paid. It's not football. It's not basketball. A typical middle of the pack Division I program only has the head coach on full time and one paid assistant coach on full time. The other 2 coaches are a volunteer who is making money, basically scraping everything he can, and the other assistant is probably profiting off camps. So, they are going to distribute this stuff left and right.
Sure. So what about if I was that magic September 1st date? Could you speak on that a little bit as a junior?
Yeah. So you have the silent period. Something that was initiated a couple years ago. If you're a junior in that silent period, which every year it changes, it's always in September. But the weeks and the days always change. Sometimes typically it's like the first week or second week of September where it's initiated. But silent period it means a couple of things. Number one, again, those are big camp times. So college coaches, cannot speak with those players. They cannot go out and see those players participate if the event is not sanctioned for NCAA. Mm-hmm. So, this is where you see a lot of camps taking place, because basically what the NCAA is telling these coaches is, hey, you need to stay on campus you need to only be seeing kids that are interested in your school. They're trying to make the playing field equal. Some schools have a lot more money in that budget to fly around and go around everywhere and see everybody they need to see, where others don't. So it's almost like a salary cap, where they're trying to make sure that the game is somewhat equal, and it's not, but it's their way of doing it. So in that case, having someone that, again, can reach out to these coaches and communicate for you and can give you answers from that coaches, it's a big deal. It makes the process a lot easier. It makes it less stressful, and this process is very stressful. But if you don't have that, again, you're going in blind, and you're praying that, number one, you're an athletic person. Number two, hopefully you have the GPA requirements that some of these schools require. And number three, you're hoping that they are actually looking for your position and your class.
Sure. Well, it definitely makes sense. All right, John, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I wanted to do it in this order so it stayed consistent with how we did it with softball.
Yeah.
So,
No.
go ahead.
Do you want to go into that first, or should we talk about more so the player side and what they should be doing and like how they should be prepping for that college experience, or how do you want to do it, Matt?
That's fine. I just wanted to get in if COVID wasn't happening, what the process would be like, and
Yeah, we can go into. Yeah, we can. Just
and I'll say this: if this was not going on right now, if the world was normal as usual, coaches would be coming to see players in the springtime. High school ball would be going on. Typically, it's local coaches, because people forget that these coaches are now invested into their team, and they're doing what they can to make save their jobs. So those coaches can be out right now recruiting, which is a big deal. But now we'll lead into COVID-19.
Yeah, so I think talk a little bit about that, because I think that's gonna change the recruiting landscape a lot, because summer ball's still up in the air too, and who knows what's gonna happen in the fall. So I'm assuming a lot of it's gonna be kind of word of mouth and trust. So I guess talk a little bit about how this is gonna kind of change the landscape of college baseball and the recruiting process too.
Yeah, it's crazy. I hope it's only temporarily. But right now, coaches are not allowed to leave campus, or they're not even on campus. But even if they were on campus, they're not allowed to hold any camps right now. They are not allowed to go out. They cannot do any recruitment. Right now, it's on a full pause. So basically what they're doing is they're going by guys that they've seen already. And that's for speaking, Division I wise. They're looking at guys that they've already seen, whether it be this past fall or last summer that they had eyes on. They can still communicate with players as long as they have that middleman. But right now, it's pretty much on pause. Speaking to a lot of coaches, it really depends on the draft coming up. Who's going to sign free agent, because the draft is only, I think, 5 rounds. And what seniors are going to do. Everybody has to remember that all these college players did receive red shirts. So the question becomes, what seniors are planning on returning, or what coaches are planning on either taking away a scholarship from a player and giving it to an incoming guy. The transfer portal is going to be huge. So a lot of coaches may feel that, we don't necessarily have to bring in a 2020 or 2021, because what we'll do is we'll steal from the transfer portal when that enters. But right now, it's April 24th. These answers aren't going to be known to anybody until after the draft and by the summertime, when they have a full read on who's returning and what their schedules and what their roster is going to look like.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just, it definitely is crazy, and them offering the extra year to everybody, it has that trickle down effect. For the next few years, so it's gonna kind of boil down to like you said, what happens in these kind of next few months. So let's talk a little bit about like the player side of things. So, say I'm a high school kid right now, and you talk to a lot of schools on a daily basis, and talk a little bit about what they're looking for first in terms of personality types, because I think that's important. I've heard coaches say, at the end of the day, I want to bring kids in that I want to be around every day. So why don't you speak a little bit on like the personality side of who they're looking for in terms of the guys that they're recruiting?
Yeah. I always say that the first three questions I always get asked by a college coach, typically the first is the grades. Um, After that, immediately is personality traits. What's his character? What kind of kid is he? What kind of teammate is he? Is he a leader? Is he a vocal leader? Is he a leader that plays or a leader that leads by actions on the field? Um, but I've never had a coach just say to me like, the kid can flat out play and not ask any questions about his character. I've even seen times where they've been extremely in love with the way a kid plays and not impressed with character, and that's led to them walking away. Um, I've done a couple interviews with some college coaches. You can find them on our New England Scorpions YouTube page. And we got a bunch more coming up. But that's something we've been talking about. And every coach says the same thing. Number one, um, they love to hear that a player loves baseball and that their dream, for example, is playing in the major leagues, because that tells them they're going to work hard. Typically when we get coaches, they're asking me questions such as, is he the first one, to practice, last one to leave? Is he the type of kid that, will pick up a teammate when he's down? Is he the type of kid that can strike out, go in the dugout and cheer for the next guy off the bat? All those little things are huge when it comes to the recruitment process. I think a lot of kids and parents especially focus so much on the physical abilities, and rightfully so. If you're not athletic and you can't play at a Division I level, then you can be the nicest guy in the world and be the best teammate. It ain't gonna happen. But a lot of people will say, well, my son does have the 60 time, he does have the pull down, he does have the exit velocity, and all these requirements that should be met in order to be in that range. But if they don't have those certain character tools, it's a risky move.
Yeah. Yeah. I think too, the academic side is so important because, like you said,
Huge.
college baseball is really interesting in terms of the scholarships,
Yeah.
the amount of money that these schools can give in terms of athletic scholarships. So why don't you speak a little on the academic side and how that can play a big role in the amount of money a kid eventually could get?
Yeah, so it's 11.7 scholarships per team. I don't know what the roster size is going to be this year. NCAA could up it, and that's what coaches are thinking, that they're going to maximize the roster. I'm thinking, to be safe, let's probably say 30 kids on a team. 30 kids and 11.7 full scholarships. So I tell players all the time, you're lucky to receive, $5,000-$6,000 in a scholarship for baseball. Academically, however, that's where the money is. Merit money is huge. And I don't know if Elise talked about it or the Thunder talked about it. I'm sure they feel the same way. There are those guys that can offer some big time money in baseball, and there are certain positions that will leverage more than others. But academically, if you're able to pull, 3.5 GPA with certain test scores, depending on what category school you are going to academically, it can offer some big time money. So I've had guys that, look at going to state schools, and let's say that state school is $25,000. They receive $2,000 in baseball, but they receive $18,000 in academic. So again, it's not the same as getting offered, $10,000 in a baseball scholarship, but I've seen it on the other end where guys receive $10,000 in baseball and only, $10,000 in academic money. And that person that had higher academics actually received a better total package offer than the person who may have been a better baseball player.
Yeah.
All about making yourself to be more marketable, right? You become.
It's the first question I'm asked. It's hands down. It's what is the GPA? What are the SAT, ACT scores if they have taken them already? The coaches, listen, it makes it a lot easier for the coach to pull the trigger. If I have two players, if I have John and Matt, and each one of you, I view the same in skill set, you're the same position, and I'm having a hard time dictating who I want to go with. If John has the better GPA, SATs, over yourself. I know as a coach, I can give him more money probably based on academic merit and save that scholarship money and therefore go after or give it to someone else who needs it. So from a coaching perspective, knowing that I've got a kid with high academics, and by the way, typically kids with high academics, from a college coach perspective, they look at that and they say, well, if he's already working hard in the classroom now, I can probably count on that come fall. A lot of coaches' biggest fear is kids, failing off or kids being on their own, especially if they're out of state guys. So if I know that, John has a higher GPA and is going to bring in more academic money, okay, I can lay off that athletic money and spare a couple $1,000s. And that makes you a bigger deal because now I can use that money for someone else. So I think overall, people have to look at it as if you have two of the same people with the same skill sets, the person with the higher academics is going to win.
And then you can use that as leverage with other schools too. You can use your package that you might receive from a school like that to say, okay, I have these in my pocket. Yeah. And so it also drives up the price of a school that maybe can't offer as much academic money. So you become more valuable.
Well, and in 4.0 GPA, based on statistics, 4.0 GPA gets you into 94% of colleges. Reason it's not 100% is because some depend on SAT. You drop down to a 3.5, which is still a great GPA. That's taking you down to about 65% of schools. So there is a major drop off.
One of the things that the Thunder program does is they encourage their sophomores to take the SATs in the spring, at least once, roughly. So that way you're 100% ready to go with a good score. When you get into the situation where schools can start really offering you give them that much more information right away. If you can do well on them, now you're becoming that much more marketable.
Yeah, and I like that idea. I might have to take that from the Thunder. But we what we do on our end is we actually try to make our kids take it multiple times. So we haven't really touched on. We do talk about having them practice early, and especially tutoring for it. But I've had kids come to me and say, "Yeah, I scheduled my SAT on this particular day and time," and I say, "Oh, good. When's the next one?" And they look at me like I have two heads. But the fact is, I think taking it multiple times, and you got to remember they take the highest score, whether that be your first time or second time. Mm-hmm. So taking it multiple times, people would be extremely surprised what even 20 points would do for a kid. Yeah. I've seen it where, a kid's 1,200 and all of a sudden he bumps it up to 1,220 and there's an extra 5,000-10,000 academic thrown his way. Mm-hmm. It's amazing what those test scores will do.
Yep.
And the only thing I want to touch on with that, Matt, if you don't mind, is I think a lot of parents have to realize these test optional schools are not test optional. I get that a ton. It's one of the things I try to stress to our parents. They say to me, well, the SATs aren't going to matter because they're a test optional school. Well, yeah, they claim to be a test optional school, and there is a reason they call it that. But they still want to know the test scores, and it still plays a big factor. Unless you go to a big time academic high school that carries a lot of academic weight. If you're a public school kid, which I was, those SAT scores do play a factor in those or those test optional schools.
Sure. And I think the way that where I don't want to speak for Thunder, but I think their logic behind that is if you can get a score high enough to justify a school giving the academic money, now the coach knows that they can offer you sooner, right? Because you have the ability.
Absolutely.
Not waiting on, if a kid, you have no idea what a kid's SAT is going to be, you are at least have something down on paper. And they also emphasize, I know a lot of people say that the junior year is the big academic year, but Thunder also really emphasizes the sophomore year from an academic standpoint, because if you can come out of your sophomore year with a really high GPA going into that summer, going into your junior season, and then you do well, plus you've taken the SATs, you become that much more marketable to the better schools.
Absolutely. I agree 100% with it. And, again, there are schools in which our guys are, they show interest in some of our guys, and these are schools that require SAT scores. And when they do, it's the kid could have a 3.9, 4.0 GPA. The first response is, let me know what his SAT score is. So 100% correct.
Yeah,
100% correct. And that's what you're going to see, Ivies, for example. Ivy Leagues did not pass the redshirt rule for their conference. They went against NCAA and decided that that's not what they're about. They're not about having fifth-year guys. It's a sucky thing if you're a senior, and I feel bad for those guys, but the Ivy's the Ivy. So you're looking at a group like that, they're pretty much taking their recruitment the same as normal, even though we're in a different time, because they know they're losing all those seniors. And each year, no matter what happens next, they're looking to bring in guys each and every time. So academic schools like that, you need to have this stuff done.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, it plays a huge role in it. Like you said, the Ivy Leagues, they won't make a move on a kid sometimes if like the GPA is fringe, and like they're gonna wait on those SAT scores. So Matt, you wanted to open up to some questions?
Sure. I'm going to ask Cody a question while I.
Yeah, let's just say what we can.
So I want if anybody has any questions, make sure to. Yeah, we had some people having difficulty getting into Zoom, so luckily the Facebook was working. But so if anybody has any questions, please send them in. I'm going to talk to Cody or ask him a question right now too. But how do you? I noticed that you guys handle fall ball a little bit differently than in a good way. I definitely agree with it, but I wonder if you could speak to why you do that. Why you guys started to do that? I think past year was the first one, right?
Yeah, this year we decided. I think fall ball, it's a crucial time for recruitment. It's a time where coaches can get out up until the silent period. So I think there's two options. You either go play in tournaments, and there's a lot of them come fall, in which you go and you play for a championship, which is great. But the way we do things is it's all about recruitment in the fall. Same thing for the summer, but in the fall, that's when team camps are offered. So in the past, what we would do is we would just say, hey guys, look, parents would say, hey, can we play 4 or 5 tournaments in the fall? I'd say, no, to be honest with you, it's not worth your money. This is a great time for your kid to get exposed and on campus at some of these places that he may be interested in. A lot of times parents and players want coaches to be interested in them, but they haven't taken the time to learn or look into the school that they're interested in. Mm-hmm. I've had guys go to places and say, in their head, they're like, yeah, coach, this is one of the schools I want to attend. What can we do? Can I play there? And then they go there and it's like, oh no, like this is not what I thought it was going to be. And you just wasted valuable time. So what we do in the fall is we put together our teams, even our young teams. When I say young, meaning like 14, 8th grade, freshmen in high school, and we get them in front of these college coaches at these events. They do a great job. It's only open to select few teams, but it's one of those things where they get to play in front of the college coaches. They get to do scout days in front of the coaches, which is very valuable, especially for these 8th graders and 9th graders, to learn how to participate in those events and learn how to handle the pressure of a coach being right behind you at all times. I think one of the things that gets overlooked is being able to handle yourself and handle pressure situations. A lot of these guys that have been extremely successful in our program have been put into the gauntlet at a young age. And they understand not to give in and not to lose focus on, especially stuff you guys talk about all the time, technique. Like, don't lose sight of your technique. Don't lose sight of what you've been working on just by caving under pressure with a guy with a radar gun behind the home plate. Mm-hmm. So we put our kids in those situations where we go to those camps, have them do scout days. I think the biggest thing they take away from it is we get a tour of the facility, and there's always recruitment talk. And I can talk till I'm blue in the face with our players and parents. I'm lucky most listen, but it still doesn't mean as much as when it comes from an actual college coach.
Sure. John, you want to grab that question?
Yeah. So this one asks, what is the ideal time to be committed by? I think there's multiple different points we can hit on that.
Yeah, that's a very open-ended question. It's a great question. That is a very difficult question to answer. It depends on where you fall in terms of division. If I were to give my opinion of a timeline, I think that between your freshman year and your junior year, there is always an opportunity to commit Division I. Junior year is not as optimal as your freshman and sophomore year. It doesn't mean it's impossible. A lot of juniors still commit to Division I, but freshman year, sophomore year, I would consider prime time for a higher division. Now, you're not going to see freshman and sophomore commit to a Division III, Division II, or to a junior college their freshman or sophomore year. Junior year is typically when we see a lot of D3s, a lot of D2s getting into the mix, as well as junior colleges, depending on what area they're in. So again, if someone's being honest with the athlete, with the player, and telling them where their expectations are, it just depends where you fall in terms of the level of college.
I think one thing too that I wanted to hit on was using social media, because I think we live, and this is something that Elise talked about the other night with social from the softball side, is that they're big into posting stuff on social media, and I know college coaches are on Twitter all the time. So talk a little bit about, especially now during this time period too, like how beneficial social media could be or not so beneficial.
This is I'm getting told left and right, put everything on social media. This is a time, like I said, coaches can't go anywhere. These coaches are locked in on Twitter, they're locked in on YouTube, they're locked in on Facebook, Instagram, everything they can be. I think people have to know the material they should be putting on social media. I think that's a big misunderstanding. I think some guys can actually hurt themselves by putting certain swings, certain pitches, certain movements on social media, because there is a negative effect to it as well. But most of it is positive, especially if you have the right body type and you're doing the right things. Social media can be a huge tool. I've posted stuff on social media before of players. I've had players post videos of themselves individually, and coaches that I don't even know, send a message and are expressing interest based on a 12-second clip that they saw on Twitter. Again, I think there's a right way and a wrong way to do it. I don't think you don't want to put it into, let me give you an example. You can't be putting up 3 videos a day. And therefore you're kind of looking like you're a bit too much in terms of character. But there is the right way to do it. And if you do it the right way, it is a huge benefit.
Yeah, I think there's so many people that are on it. There's so many different places where you can just tweet something. Like I know Pitching Ninja, he started the Flat Ground app and Flat Ground Bats too, which you tweet something at him, he's going to retweet it, and he has 15,000 followers plus on his account, and you're bound to be seen by maybe someone that will like you and might be the right fit for you. So yeah, I agree that that's definitely huge. I think we'll see if anyone has any more questions, but I had one more thing too. I think talking about lists, coming up with ideas of places you want to go, I think is important, and not overwhelming yourself in the recruiting process. I know you alluded to it a little bit earlier, but I think talk more specifically about how kids should be going about putting together their list of schools, and what are some points that they should be looking for when coming up with that list.
Yeah, our biggest thing is, number one, we talked about it before, know where you are academically and know what you want academically. If you're not a high academic student, doesn't mean you don't have a great GPA, but if you're not going to qualify to get into an Ivy League or a top tier academic school that may not be considered Ivy League, again, you can waste a lot of time by looking into those schools if you're not there. The other thing is look in the mirror and know who you are. We've had this discussion, John, before, and I discussed it with every single parent and player. I've had a lot of kids that you can tell right away, can they survive on their own, or do they need to be more local where they have help from family? And it's not a negative thing. There are kids that will say to me, I've never cooked. I've never done my own laundry. Um, Kids like that, sometimes you want to look into being closer to home if you're family oriented. I'm very family oriented. I love my family to death, but I wanted to go away. Best thing my parents ever did for me, and it was a pain in the butt at the time, but it was like, all right, you want to go away? You're cooking every, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and you're doing your laundry for the next 2 years. You can do that consistently. We'll look into going away. So I think that a lot of these kids will sit there and say, oh man, this school in the SEC or this school in the Big Ten, like these are incredible schools, but they don't understand, being that far away and the time that you're going to be spending at school and with your program. You're talking about coming home maybe once before the springtime. And that's during, Christmas vacation. So if you can't survive on your own, or you don't know how to live on your own, sometimes it's better to look locally.
Yeah. That did you want to grab?
We got a couple more questions. Someone asks, are there any specific events that you find to be most valuable with most visibility to colleges? And are there any that are a waste of time?
Again, depends where you are. I can speak for if you do fall into the academic category. Honor Roll Camps does a great job. I don't know if you guys ever heard of that. They run across the country. They actually, I think it's 2 events in Long Island at Baseball Heaven. They're expensive, but typically they host about 150 schools and the colleges, and they're from all sorts of divisions, D3, D2, D1s, and they're in the upscale academic side. They do a terrific job with their events. Others, show ball, and I'm probably missing a bunch, but anytime you can find an event that offers multiple divisions, I think is well worth it. I don't like sending kids to certain camps that may only, be just division ones. Sometimes it's good to, get out there and be in front of D1s, D2s, and D3s and see where you match up based on evaluation.
Sure.
Yeah.
That definitely makes sense. I've also had some parent or some people maybe comment on the fact that it seems like in even some of the better tournaments that kids are already like, I don't know, maybe you can speak to this about your own teams, that you go to these tournaments and you go play against the team and their whole team is already committed. But so in reality, are you going there to play against competition to get recruited? Like that's an interesting.
Yeah, it comes down to what your coach is doing for you or what your program's doing for you. We've been in many tournaments in which we've had exactly that, where we go against, I think 2 years ago, we went against the Dirtbags down in North Carolina, 15 kids on the roster, all 15 committed to top 25 Division I schools. But we still had probably 20 to 30 plus coaches in the stands. That was an event in which a lot of teams, it was a national event, it was the Impact World Series. So there's a lot of national teams, but we also communicated with coaches beforehand, letting them know that this is where we're going to be. And this is who we have. Here's film on the kids. And it went from possibly being no coaches there, because again, the opponent we're playing is all committed, to being 20 to 30 plus coaches in the stands, because we've got a team from the Northeast coming down, in which we've communicated with all the coaches, all the programs, letting them know that we're going to be there and this is what we got. So I think, as long as you're doing your homework and your research and you're communicating with these schools ahead of time, no matter who you're playing, you can get guys. I've played against teams that were terrible, and I still had coaches in the stands. It doesn't look great for a kid, if he's going up there and you're trying to sell a pitcher and he finishes with 17 strikeouts, throwing nothing but a fastball. But again, it's being able to get the guys there yourself. And these coaches have to know that you're serious. There's a lot of credibility to this business. I tell my guys all the time, I love every single one of my players, but I'm not going to stick my neck on the line if you're not going to put in the work and you're not going to, do exactly what we say in terms of being a good character kid, being a good teammate. You have to be on top of your game at all times and pretend that someone's watching at all times. Because I've seen coaches, I had a parent one time say to me, I didn't see any coaches in the stands today. And I said, well, I saw 10. And they said, well, how do you know? I said, because I know the coaches. These coaches sometimes don't show up with their, I'm a Gator fan, so I'm going to say, University of Florida hat, University of Florida polo, and wave a University of Florida flag around to make you know that they're there. Some of these guys will show up in just casual clothes. I'm not going to ruin any of the coaches' trust here by saying who, but there are quite a few coaches that I know personally that love just going in with, khaki pants on and a polo with no name on it, and seeing how the parents react in the stands, as well as the player when he thinks no one's there.
Sure. Yep. I'm going to tweak this next question a little bit. And how do you know when to pull the trigger? Okay. The question came in as you get an offer when you're younger, as maybe a freshman or a sophomore for a Division I school. How do you know when to pull the trigger versus wait to hear from other schools? And I think that's tough, even from a developmental standpoint, right? From a kid. So that's a tough situation, Coach. So could you speak on that a little bit?
So I always tell kids that are in a situation this, it's a double-edged sword. Number one, you should be very thankful that you have the tools to be considered receiving a commitment at that age. But at the same time, there's a lot more required in terms of responsibility when you're receiving an offer like that. I hate to say it, but if you're in that situation, you're going to find a lot of times these coaches are not going to wait. They are very quick to pull the trigger. They want to know if you want to be there. They want a response very soon. Some don't. There are some coaches out there that will say, take your time. They're awaiting their phone call anxiously every single day. And I'm getting a phone call saying what's going on. But, they'll try to back off as much as they can. But there are coaches that will sit there and say, you have till 6 o'clock tonight. You have till the next day at 10 a.m. There's guys in our program that can tell you that for a fact that, they get seen by a coach in one day and they're told by noon tomorrow, if we don't have an answer, we're going with somebody else. So I think to answer that question, it depends what the offer is. If the commitment is we need to know by tonight or the next day, or you have a few days, well, that's how much time you have to know. That's why we tell our kids when they're in that situation, if they're prepared to go to a camp, knowing that the coach is interested, and knowing that there's a chance the trigger could be pulled, do your research ahead of time. We had a freshman this year that went to a camp, and ended up committing, the last day he was there. And same thing, he got to talk to the coach a little bit, which was great, knowing, what the program was about before going there. And at the same time, when he's down there, he asked the right questions and, looked into the school, looked into what the cost was going to be, looked at the academics. So they offer what his major would be. And again, I know he's a freshman, so they don't know what major they're necessarily shooting for, but at least have an idea. And I think it's important to remember, for whoever asked that question, and it's a question that's asked a lot to me, is a commitment's a commitment. It's a verbal. There's no writing, until your senior year on National Signing Day. So they could easily pull at any time. And at the same time, we don't tell our kids, we don't think it's a good look for kids that pull commitments. We want that commitment to be a firm handshake, something that we believe in. But it's a verbal commitment. There's always an opportunity somewhere else if you feel as though it's not the right fit.
Sure. There's another question on Facebook. Sorry, John, I know you can't see it. Do you think that we're at a disadvantage because we're coming from the Northeast and not someplace warm like the South?
Yes and no. I heard it when I first came up here. I heard how important Northeast players were, and I didn't really believe it. But for doing this for so long, Northeast players are very valued. A lot of it is because we're not able to play as much, that coaches believe in longer life in the arm. A lot of coaches do like multi-sport athletes. So there are ways that value Northeast players. What sticks out like a sore thumb is we don't get to play all year round. So being a kid that grew up in Florida and got to play all year round, in fact, in my high school, we weren't even allowed to play multiple sports. I played baseball in high school, and we played baseball in the fall as a travel ball team, in the winter as an AAU team, in the spring as our high school team, and the summer as our showcase team. So we were lucky if we had a week off in between seasons. But there's a lot of wear and tear, and at the same time, there's a lot of exposure. But I would argue that Northeast players are possibly valued more than anybody in the country. I've talked to a lot of college coaches that are begging to get into this area because of the life these guys have on their arm still, because of the training that goes in. I'll speak for myself. Growing up in Florida, it's play. Get in front of coaches, play. There wasn't much training going on. I actually learned more coming up here and taking the time in the off season to say, like, okay, we can't play because there's a foot of snow out there. And get to work on the technical side of things. I think that's what coaches look at, and they see that these guys in this region are able to focus, if they are at least able to focus on their technique and on their ability to evaluate themselves and learn how to be a better ball player and put that into play when the time comes.
That was from Cole Hambley, by the way.
What's up, Cole? Good kid right there. Gonna be a good player.
Oh yeah. I don't really see. Oh, Braxton asked the question about the offers at a younger age too.
Tell Braxton to lift his arm up a little bit more when he's throwing. John will get that one. They don't listen to me, Matt. They only listen to John and Coach Mann and Coach Brooks. They don't listen to me. I'm telling you, I can get these guys to 90.
So I don't really see any other questions. I'll give it a couple more minutes to see if anything creeps in.
Listen, anybody wants to ask a question about my Tampa Bay Buccaneers winning the Super Bowl this year, I'm more than happy to answer.
Yeah, you're lucky I let you come on without the helmet.
I should have started with the helmet on.
You did. John, he did a family Zoom call, and he came on with his Tampa Bay Buccaneers helmet on.
Yep. I'm proud of it.
I screenshot it, so I'll have it for all the time.
All the suffering, all the verbal abuse from New England Patriot fans I've taken the past couple of years, and now we got Tom Brady on our side, Gronkowski on our side.
Yeah, but you're very quickly forgetting about how much crap you talked about Tom Brady and Rob Gronkowski.
No.
Oh,
that doesn't sound like me. Doesn't sound like me.
No,
well, listen, they're on my team now. Hey, one thing I will say while you guys are waiting is, Cape Cod announced they're not having a summer league this year. That just came out a little bit ago. So there'll be no Cape Cod summer league this year. And I think around this time into May, I think we'll start to see some tournaments unraveling in which they're going to announce if they're having tournaments or if they're going to be postponed.
Yep. So that's why it becomes that much more important.
It's absolutely huge. It's absolutely huge right now because guys that play in our program that are at that level, or God forbid we don't have a summer this year. Again, hopefully we do, but God forbid we don't. At least we can still vouch for our kids, and at least we can still put them in a situation.
I'm laughing at. Do you see the chat?
No, I saw it. Go ahead. What do you say?
Who took you to the foot doctor when you first came to Rhode Island?
That would be your father. That's when I knew. That's when I knew the Hopkins people were good people.
Yeah.
My freshman year, I fractured my navicular bone. In a cold freaking day. And I had no transportation, and your dad took me to I don't even know it was somewhere in Smithfield, but took me right there, got my x-ray done, everything else. That's how I knew the Hopkins were good people.
There you go.
At least some of them. Danny, yeah. I still question.
Yeah, he's not on here to defend himself. I think he's
that's all right. He's changing diapers right now.
That too. So, Cody, we want to thank you for coming on board and completing this circuit. I think it's something we're going to look into in the next winter, next off season, probably a weekly thing. So probably have to change the name because hopefully it won't be locked down anymore.
I know. No, I appreciate you guys having me. Hopefully I was able to give at least some insight to, steps that they can take in this period of time we're in. And hopefully everybody stays safe. Hopefully, something is done in terms of getting us out this summer. I love my wife and son dearly. I'm surprised she hasn't thrown me out yet. With all the coaches I'm talking to and all the work I'm doing, but it'd be great to get outside and play some baseball soon.
Yeah, and don't forget, this is if anybody wants to rewatch this, it's on Facebook Live. We were lucky tonight, so that's playing, and then it will be on the YouTube Hops YouTube channel tomorrow.
Beautiful.
All right, thanks, Cody.
Anytime, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, it's all set, Matt.
You guys good?